Hello and welcome back to Analysing Avatar. For you, it may have been a week, but for Chris and I, it's been about 30 minutes. We went off, we watched The Swamp, we've come back. So whatever weird energy vibes going on last episode, that is carrying right through into this one.
All the way through, baby.
All the way through.
I feel like we've been quite energized. Obviously, you had your whole 15% bit, but in general, we've been quite energized every episode this series. And I think, honestly, I think it's the quality of the show. Like it's just been it's been so good. But I'll let you recap, and then we'll analyze Avatar.
And then I was going to say, and then we'll do the podcast, I guess.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, then we'll review the episode we've just watched. So this is episode 3. Are we up to 3? 4? 4. This is episode 4, The Swamp. So this is the episode in which the gang are lured by a mysterious sort of sense Aang gets into a swamp. They're initially lured, sort of, Aang says he sends it there, and then there's a tornado that sort of forces them into the swamp and separates them from Appa and Momo. They're initially travelling together, then they get separated. Whole thing's got spooky swamp vibes. There's a crazy bird that like has a human scream, which is just the best thing. They get separated. They all have a weird vision of something. Aang, what appears to be like a young girl in a fancy dress that's like giggling. He doesn't recognise, but Katara has a glimpse of what she thinks is her mother, and Sokka sees Yue. But Sokka, being the science skeptic as always, is like, I hit my head. I breathe in some weird swamp gas. Like, he doesn't buy it. They eventually get to what they realize is the center of the swamp, where they come across what seems like a big giant spirit creature made of swamp vines, which they fight for a bit until they realize that there's actually just a man inside of it who's bending the water in the vines to create the thing. Meanwhile, Appa and Momo are being hunted by some swamp folk that were looking to eat him. Aang realizes this and goes to assist, and then it's all happy, friendly times, but Aang still got questions, obviously, about this person he saw, and why the swamp called him there in the first place. The conclusion he comes to is that it's somebody he has not yet met, of importance, presumably. Meanwhile, good old Zuki Poos,
Zuki Pops.
Zuki Poos, he gets a bit annoyed at this guy with two broadswords sort of mistreating his uncle, and at the end of the episode he dons the blue spirit mask yet again and retrieves new broadswords from that guy. Pretty cool moment. Not a huge influence on this episode, Zuko, but he's this sort of top and tail sort of tag either end of the episode, which is fun. So there you go. That's The Swamp. Very poorly summarized by Sleepy Man. What did we think, Chris?
Sleepy Dan.
Oh
God!
I will say that the benefit of having Dan as your name means you could like that. The possibilities are endless, Chris. Like if I was Spider-Man, I wouldn't be Spider-Man. I'd be Spider Dan.
Yeah, that's true. Actually,
Bat Dan.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah.
Marathon Dan. Anything that has man in it, you can make it Dan.
Dan down if you fall over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, what did you think of the episode, Chris?
I thought it was great. I was trying to think of more.
So if anyone didn't listen to last week's episode, this is the vibe I meant. This is the awkward energy that's carrying through.
Yeah. Here it is. Come swim in it. The episode.
Plunge me into some of that awkward energy. I'm gonna bathe in this. Oh.
Still, one of my favourite. It was just the way it was phrased. One of my favourite uni moments was there was this person that was annoying people, and someone was defending them, and someone else was just like, and the person defending them was like, I feel like, you know, you've all jumped off the boat with being annoyed with this person, and I'm just chilling, and I'm you know, I've not jumped, and I'm the last person to jump. And one of our mates just looked at them and just went, and the water is lovely. It's just really made me laugh.
That's good.
Anyway, episode, Daniel.
Yes.
I loved it. I really loved it. I'm gonna keep. I'm almost getting scared now of like an episode where I've got lots of nitpicks. I think there is a nitpick. We'll circle back, but in general, I'm loving this sort of, whether deliberate or not, this sort of every episode is a different thing. Like I found episode 2 to be this amazing comedy. I found episode 3 to be a great little heist movie.
Yeah.
And I found this episode to be a great horror. Like it's thriller style. Like it's awesome. Like it's so good. It makes me laugh because the whole episode I'm like, are they waterbending? Are they airbending? Are they? But like the people in the boat, and then like when he's like bending the weeds and stuff, I'm like, what's going on? Is there? And I was getting like, I hope there's not like a fifth like plant bending. Like I was like, we're not doing that, are we? What's going on? Explain it. And then it becomes clear they're water benders, and I'm like, and this isn't my nitpick. This is just me talking about my own stupidity for hopefully people's amusement. And I'm going, explain it. Explain how he can move the reeds and stuff. Explain it. And I'm like, you're not going to be able to explain it. There's not going to be a good explanation. And then in one line, he's just like, I just bend the water in the plants. And I'm like, yeah, it's water in the plants. That makes sense. It's a good explanation.
Yeah, it's cool. Great. I've said to you before, there's like, what's great about the show is that they don't ever rest on people who can fire out their hands, throw water at you, bend the air to sort of move about, or like, or move the earth to sort of strike or create like barriers and stuff to shield them. Like they very much go like, well, what other interesting things could, because obviously, across the world, people have different skills, right? And in different scenarios, you're going to use them differently. A waterbender dumped in a swamp, they're going to bend the vines. That makes perfect sense, and it's just the thought that's gone into the world and the way that the different people use their powers in different ways is remarkable. It's one of the best things about the show, because it just means there's always something fresh you can see someone doing. Like having Azula introduced, and she can do the blue fire plus lightning and stuff, and it's like, okay, there are other things firebenders can do, and then seeing that waterbenders could also theoretically control plants, it's, of course, it makes perfect sense, and you just go, well, that's a cool skill these swamp waterbenders have figured out. And I'll tell you, there's more to come. There's more little interesting variations on bending that we'll see over time, and every one of them is as interesting as the last. So I'm always happy with when they do an episode like this. I mean, although it does get, that element of surprise obviously wears off after a certain point, because obviously they can only catch you out with that one or two times before you see someone doing something weird and go, well, it's a version of some bending, right? So he's either this bender or that. But like, you know what I mean? Like at a certain point, you just sort of you know. And in fact, I think the show even stops questioning some of those at a certain point. So yeah, but it is really fun, and I can absolutely see how it caught out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a newer viewer,
and so just visually, all of that stuff. I mean, this whole episode is full of some amazing visuals, but especially the swamp fight, and the creature fight, or what we thought was a creature fight, like just awesome. Looked fantastic. Appa getting caught looked fantastic. Like, and it really, there was some horrific visuals. There was some really scary shit in the episode. In terms of just the monster scares, in terms of the psychological scares of them. Seeing Yui and others. And the sort of mind fuckery of all of that.
It has a spooky vibe.
Great.
It's got a whole tone, and I think it's partly done with like the writing, obviously, but I think a lot of this atmosphere of this episode comes from the visuals and the music and the sound design and stuff. When they're moving through the forest and the swamp, and it sounds and looks eerie as hell. Like it is And and it's already you already get an unnatural vibe from it because of the fact that Aang feels like it's kind of called to me, like they get pulled into it. You see vines moving early on and think, well, what's going on there? Who's watching them? And of course, the great thing about this is as well, this is a show where spirit creatures exist. We've met them. Right? Like, we had that big panda thing from the first season. Well, it was a big monster and then it turned to a panda. So it's not we're not in a world where, like, in a normal show, a normal action show tries to do an episode like this. There's a logical explanation for the monster, right? Because you just go, well, there's never been a monster before. There's not going to be suddenly a monster now, right? But in the world of Avatar, yeah, we've had spirit monsters before. We've done that.
Yeah,
so it could absolutely have been a spirit monster. No reason to, if anything, no reason to even doubt that until the end, and that's what's so clever about it, because you buy it. And that's why it's a really good rug pulling, because when you realize it's actually a guy, a person bending these vines, which is a logical explanation. You almost have the rug pulled under you in reverse to how it normally works, because that's the thing you weren't expecting. Yeah,
definitely.
Which is just taking advantage of the world they've set up, basically.
Yeah, it's really, the whole episode is really effective, really well done. Do you want to hear if we're going to find a nitpick?
Sure. This is a thing that didn't bother us too much, but I suppose if we were really looking for a thing to criticize, this is the thing.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. It just so happens to be more noticeable because we've just done an episode where we talked about the beauty of this show often doing B things that tie so nicely into everything. The timing of this episode following that discussion is unfortunate, but you did it yourself in the wrap up. Like Zuko and Uncle Fire Dude still having a bad time. Yeah, that's it. Like, do you know what I mean? Those it's one scene. It's bookended by that. It's not connected. It's not thematically similar. It felt like it was them going, right, we've not seen Zuko in an episode. We didn't see him last episode, so we better put him in this episode and make it clear that he's still pretty bitter and times are still pretty shit for them. And especially where it's like a scene at the end, a scene at the beginning, it jars a little. It feels like it's there just to have them there, in comparison to other appearances, and I think the answer would have either been to flesh that out a bit more, but I don't know what you take away from the swamp because it was all glorious, or just don't have them in the episode and have it all be about the swamp.
Yeah, I definitely, it doesn't tie thematically, which is something we've often complimented the show for doing. I guess
it's good stuff. They're good scenes. Like, I like the scenes, like the Uncle Fire Dude having to dance for his money and getting described as a fat man dancing for his dinner, which, hey, I'll jiggle for a pork pie. Like, it is, it's all...
Whatever I was expecting you to say then, it absolutely wasn't. I'll jiggle for a pork pie.
I will, mate. Like pork pies. Like, it's all good stuff. I really, really love those scenes. That you really feel the humiliation or at least you feel Zuko's humiliation on behalf of his uncle. You feel like his uncle doesn't mind, but when he's getting like the sparks are flying from the chains whipping at their feet and stuff, and you think these guys are royalty in the most feared nation in the world. Like, it's all good stuff.
Yeah.
It feels a little tacked on in this episode, unfortunately. Yeah. I love those scenes, don't get me wrong. But and again, the game is, if forced to find a nitpick, what's the nitpick? It's not even really a nitpick. It's just we've been doing that for 2 episodes now, the last 2 episodes. And it feels like this is the one where, even though it didn't necessarily bother me that much, this is the most like, well, there's your nitpick. This is the most low-hanging nitpick fruit, where it's just like, let's just pick at that one because, And equally, if anything else we've talked about the last few episodes, if someone really strongly felt that way about it, I think I would defend it and be like, oh yeah, but what about this? What about this? The way we did with each other in the last episode when we kind of disagreed on each other's nitpicks. If you were to sit here now and go, I really didn't like that, it's a bit tacked on, it didn't fit, I'd be like, yeah, all right. Like, do you know what I mean? I think it's It's the closest we've come this series to a nitpick for me.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I didn't like the scenes. Doesn't mean I actually am bothered by it.
No.
It's just the closest we've come.
I think they get away with it for me because I do really like because basically it reestablishes Zuko's because they don't have their stuff, right? They don't have their things. They were usurped. Like they ran away. So if you probably wouldn't notice this because it goes by quite quick. But when this episode opens and you see them sat there, with that weird bird horse thing that they nicked last episode, 2 episodes ago, the cart that goes by is selling masks. One of which is the Blue Spirit mask. So they set up.
But
Zuko.
that detail doesn't change anything.
No. I'm not trying to counter your point. I'm just explaining some of the things that I like because you're right. It's not connected to the rest of the episode. You could absolutely argue it's tacked on because it's in no way connected to anything else. But I'm just sort of want to talk about the things that I kind of liked about it just in general. So I kind of the reason it gets a pass is because while it is absolutely tacked on, and this doesn't change that criticism, it does make me more okay with it because I don't mind it being tacked on because of the detail and what it adds. You know what I mean? Like it's like a necessary evil. Yeah, all right. It's bookending this episode. It doesn't really feel connected to. But what the alternative is to slide more scenes in between that make it fit more. But then you're gonna no story you could give any other character would contrast with the weird spooky horror vibes of the rest of the episode. So I guess the best way to do this is to bookend the episode with it so it doesn't at least tonally fuck up.
Or put it in another episode.
Yeah, but
you know what I mean. We don't need a B plot every week.
No, but structurally, I think they're involved in I think they have a plot in the next episode. So I guess this is their way of setting up the return of the Blue Spirit. So at the beginning of the episode, the mask cart goes by with a Blue Spirit mask on it, so you know where Zuko gets the mask from. But that guy uses those 2 swords to strike at Uncle Iroh, the broadswords, which are similar to what the Blue Spirit had. And I don't know if you noticed, but when Zuko gets his revenge at the end of the episode, and he takes that guy's swords, he knocks one and then grabs them, and it's really just setting up him reacquiring the Blue Spirit garb, I guess. Which is I think worth doing in general. And if there's no other place in the series to fit it in, then doing it here is probably the best way to do it. Because again, at least they didn't go so far as to splice scenes about their adventures in the Earth Kingdom throughout this episode and fuck up the tone. I'm not saying that, again, this doesn't negate the criticism because you're right. It's that they do feel tacked on to this episode. But I think they're worth including in the series. So if this is the only place you can fit them in, then cool. I'm okay with that. The only thing I would say about those scenes that I did think, when Iroh, who I love and respect and think is a very sort of kind and intelligent man, but he's also, been shown in the past to understand sort of bad intentions when they're in front of him. With Azula, he knew something was up, right? He knew they weren't necessarily going to be welcomed back home in the bosom of, like, welcome back to the Fire Nation, we love you now, when they were just sort of thrown out. It's weird for me when that guy, who is very cruel and makes him dance for his dinner for a laugh, for his own entertainment, slices swords at his feet to make him dance, and then throws a coin at him and is insulting him. When Iroh sits down going, such a kind man, I was like, dude, I respect you, but what, you drunk, bro? Like, what the fuck? Like, what?
Well, I think he just may be drunk, or he may be being sarcastic.
Yeah, I guess. That's the kind of the counter for me, which is that I think those scenes are valuable to the series, that even if they don't fit with this episode.
But I think if they need to be in the series and need to be in before, say, the next episode, then actually I think tonally and thematically those scenes would have been better bookending the last episode, because then it's about how they're alone and having to fight and have nothing, and his sister is able to swan about and build a team and has the support of everyone else, and it's kind of a these are where the chess pieces are episode with all our kind of 3 sets of characters, and tonally it suits that episode much better.
That's true, but what do you lose in the run? Because as we said, the last episode had a lot.
Get rid of that baby.
Fucking hell, you and that baby.
No, I think
like just structurally, the last episode was really dense. There's a lot going on, and you know, we complimented it for fitting in so much. But I mean, I think you take one piece out of that episode and it falls down. Like it's a very tightly constructed piece of television, and I think you lose much time in that, then you would struggle. But sure, if you can make it work, then yeah, you're right. It does fit better in that one. Again, nothing I said, and I said this when I was explaining it. Nothing I said discounts your criticism.
Yeah.
I'm simply sort of saying the reason it gets the pass, the reason it is a nitpick and not an act like a full-on. This is my problem with the episode. Is because of all the things I was talking about, which is that it does do a lot, even if it doesn't fit with the rest of the content it's bookending. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And there's a much worse version of it that intrudes on this episode in a much more offensive way, where it's spliced in a Zuko plot throughout that's not relevant, and it just messes all the tone up. Because what this episode is very effective at doing in all the swamp stuff, the main bulk of the episode, is create this eerie tone, right? And if we had to keep cutting to the Earth Kingdom and Zuko being a surly teenager with daddy issues, that would, I think, really hurt the rest of the episode. Whereas at least the bookending version of it, swamp episode still exists as a whole.
The best.
It's still 19 straight minutes or whatever, 18 straight minutes of swamp stuff that's uninterrupted, has its A to B story, and maintains that brilliant tone that I liked so much about the episode, So there are definitely worse ways this could have played out.
If it's going to be in this episode, this is the best execution of that, without doubt. Yeah. What were some of your favourite elements of the episode?
I'm totally with you in terms of like just the tone, the spookiness, all that stuff. I really liked this episode. Was surprisingly funny in ways I wasn't because I think of this episode as being that sort of spooky one, but it's actually got a lot of funny bits in it. Like when Momo blows the Appa whistle and Appa whacks him with his tail. That beautiful. That was really funny. When they heard the human scream and then realized it's a bird that's call sounds exactly like that. That's genius. Sokka just trouncing through the swamp and Aang being like, maybe we shouldn't do that, and Sokka just being completely sarcastic about it the whole time. I asked the swamp, he's fine with it. It's and also when he gets that leech thing stuck to him in the beginning of the episode and he says, why do things keep attaching to me? Which is a great reference to the previous episode with the pentapus. This episode is funnier than I remember, and one of my favorite comedy moments, and it's rare in an animated show that someone's expression makes me laugh. Animated shows have really mastered an expression making me feel something, sad, heartbreak. That's really good and something they've really just over the years perfected. But one thing I don't think comedy doesn't really, translate through animated facial expressions as much. It can happen, it does happen, but it's not as common. I think you're more likely to make me laugh with a pratfall style visual gag or an actual verbal gag than someone's face. But when the swamp guy says to Katara that they're waterbenders to their kin, her look of basic disgust.
Yeah.
Like she needs to take a hot bath.
My favourite bit
is incredible.
My favourite bit similar to that was when they're like, we didn't know there was other waterbenders. Do they have a nice swamp too?
Yeah. Do you got a nice swamp in the Northern Water Tribe too? No. We mostly have snow and ice. No wonder you left. So yeah, I must admit, considering how much horror vibes this episode gives, it actually fits in quite a lot of comedy, and that is
definitely
pleasant and needed and works really well, I think. So yeah, that's my big compliment, is that while it is a successful horror thing, they also managed to do that tonal balance, the sort of tonal balancing act that is also slipping in quite a surprisingly large amount of comedy, which has got to be applauded, because I think I would struggle writing something like this where the tone is kind of spooky, and then to slide in, such because it's not just even the gags. It's the gags are there. It's the tone of the gags. They're very silly on purpose, and like that's great. But it's like, again, it just feels so opposite to what the rest of the episode is doing. It's kind of a bit of a magic trick that they've managed to make that work without detracting from the horror tone.
Yeah, completely, absolutely. I just with the water tribe, with the the waterbenders in this episode, I love that they set up this big epic world where the whole world is sort of taken over by this war and this fight, and there's just some water tribers just living in a swamp, completely unaware.
Yeah, isolated from everything
that's going on around them.
Yeah, they don't know there's a war going on. They didn't even know there were other waterbenders in the world. Like that is a special level of isolation, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I think.
Go on.
Go. No, you go.
So I think that's a really clever world building thing as well. It's like, it's a big old world out there. Like if if certain countries on this planet started warring like tomorrow, there are definitely places out there that are isolated enough that they just wouldn't be aware of it. And it's like, it's a big world with a lot of people and a lot of different cultures. And this at some point some other waterbenders either traveled out from the northern water tribes or southern water tribes and settled in a swamp, or there were just some fluky waterbenders born in the swamp area, and that's their own little culture and little pocket. Like, it's just one of those things, isn't it? And I think because it's just such a good idea. It's just a good world building thing to sort of say like it's not as even the borders we show you in the opening of each episode. When we show you that map and it's colored, for the different nations. It's not, again, even that isn't completely like set as those borders go. There are places, that might count as Earth Kingdom territory, but there's a big old swamp there, lots of water, and there's some waterbenders living in the middle of it. And I just think what that does for the world building is top notch, Chris.
I completely agree.
Bring my energy up.
I feel like I did a big spiel of what I loved at the beginning. What else did you like, Daniel?
Well, I wanted to ask you actually a question. Was my next thing, if that's okay. I wanted to ask you what you think to Aang's vision of a person he hasn't met yet. Both the explanation they give for that and what you think that might be.
I think the explanation was fine. I think that made sense. Time, it's viewing time in a different way. The Avatar is clearly, a spiritual being that can play through time and communicate, after death and with different versions of itself and stuff. So I think the exclamation makes a whole lot of sense. I think that's fine. As for who, I don't know. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I know that's a really shitty answer, but future child maybe or something. I really don't know. And I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you find yourself? Because I think the first time I watched this episode, I tried pausing to get a good look at the figure. I don't know if you gave that a go.
Once, but I couldn't do it. I did rewind back to see what Sokka's, Yue. I did rewind back and put on subtitles to see what Yue said to Sokka because I didn't quite catch it. But I didn't. I tried, but I couldn't catch the figure. So yeah, I didn't. Maybe if I did that, I'd have more of an idea. I think there's no like. I could be missing stuff, and I know that, apologies. I know I was hot on it with Steven Universe, and I've been quite poor at predicting or whatever with this, but I can't think of any threads to pull on that. I feel like she's someone completely new, and I don't think she's connected to, unless obviously it's a daughter or something, in which case hopefully it would be connected to Katara, but I can't think of any existing threads to pull on to go, she's part of this storyline. She's from this, other than the daughter guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I when I got to this episode, I had theory on who it might be, which I don't want to necessarily say because I don't want to lead you down a path. Because whether my theory was right or wrong, I feel like you're either going to go down that path, and then there's a chance for either I've spoiled it because it's right, or you're disappointed because it's wrong.
What was your theory connected to?
Aang's journey.
Okay.
Like Aang's goals.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I was thinking at the time. I had a specific because obviously like you with this series, it's interesting because all these episodes have been great, but it is kind of lacking the thrust of the previous series because the previous series had a real we're going here to do this the whole time, right? You know, they were at first they were a little meandering because he was like, I need to see the air temple, I want to see the air nomads, realizing they're gone. But then after that, it was like, let's get you trained up. We're heading to Northern Water Tribe. That was always the goal. And with this series, the first episode, they're like, we're heading to Omashu. We're going to get Boomy. And it's like, there's the thrust. And then they get there, and that doesn't work out. And now it's like, they feel a little aimless right now. the gang.
Yeah, especially when, you know, that comet's still a-coming.
Exactly. Exactly. So my sort of thinking was that this figure would be some important person on that journey for Aang. Because I thought, what else would you be wanting to, like, because it's Aang that sees this character, so it's got to be related to that. So I sort of followed. I'm being vaguer than I was. I was more specific in my theorizing at the time, but yeah, I had an idea of where that might be going.
Okay.
Based on sort of that thought, that sort of train of thought I just described, but it's a really effective season in that it's almost kind of exciting that you don't have that. I mean, well, definitely. It both adds and detracts from it because I do like the thrust, I do like the urgency that you get from here's our goal, we're heading towards it. But at the same time, it does mean like you don't feel like you know what the next episode is going to bring, right? Like
yes. Yeah, but it's been such high quality that doesn't bother me. Like I'm almost now, and you know, like I say, the show almost can't keep up with my hype, and I'm aware that's my fault, not the show's. But I'm almost like comedy, heist, horror. Where are we going next week, Avatar? Do you know what I mean? And so it doesn't. It's weird because last series that I remember complaining and feeling sometimes that like. That feeling of there's a fucking big comet, like get on with it, like. But to be fair, last episode's mission was to get King Boomy and get an earthbending teacher. So it's only been one episode of them not getting on with it, but also the quality of the episodes have been so high,
exactly,
that I've in part forgotten that as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like it totally works. They're getting away with it. It's not a criticism so much as it is an observation of something that you'd think wouldn't work, but somehow is. Like this is what I was sort of saying. Like it's you would expect a certain amount of thrust at this point for the characters, and you feel like that would give it more edge if the characters had a more were a bit more ambitious. A bit more directionful, like you know, because it just leaves you sort of guessing that you literally don't know. And by the way, I mean, if you want the answer as a tease, I can at the end of this episode. If you want to be surprised, I won't tell you. But if you want to know what next episode where we're going in terms of what the genre is, I can tell you if that's something you're intrigued.
No, I'll stay surprised.
You'll stay surprised. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good episode. I think it's kind of it's a tricky one because there's almost like I think there's less to say about this one than others. So unless you've got anything particular you want to point out, we'll hit up some notes and just see if there's any like details we can pull out, and then we'll move on because it's one of those things where it's like it's not thinner. That sounds like a
well, it's because the compliments are so broad. Like, for example, we could talk about the ways it creates itself as a horror, but the way it does that is the spooky visuals, the atmosphere, the tension building, the pacing of the script, the fact that the audience are in the dark about what's going on as well. But, you know, other than going, this visual was great. Oh, didn't this look cool? Didn't this look spooky? There's not. Do you know what I mean? There's not too much discussion on those things, but all of those
they're broader compliments rather than specific compliments. But
it's
the whole episode is doing this, not this one moment.
Yeah, but all of those things are absolutely true, and I think it was a great episode. But what were you going to say? Sorry,
I was just So other little notes, I guess, would be the thing to sort of shift to. So for a moment that really kind of sideswiped me when I first watched it, or certainly, more recent viewings. Katara. Credit to Mae Whitman for her voice work here, because Katara thinks she sees her mum, and when she doesn't, she breaks down, and she's crying, and that's a really hard thing to sell. And I think just because it's so sudden and out of the blue in this episode, it's not like they have a running theme in this episode where she's thinking about her mother. They have to show a previously unupset, spooked out because of the spooky forest, but not thinking of her mother, and that kind of upset Katara, suddenly feeling that. And you've got, 5 to 8 seconds to sell us on Katara having an understandable breakdown at suddenly seeing her mother, or thinking she's seen her mother out of nowhere, right? So that really is down to two things selling that. One is the visuals, which the way they pull back to the wide shot and you see Katara, they animate her just sort of almost falling to her knees, and then they add Mae Whitman's sort of voice acting doing the sort of sobs. It's really effective. It's amazing how quickly they sell you on that, and how heartbreaking it is out of nowhere. And that is it, isn't it? When you experience grief, when you've lost someone, often people talk about, like, you'll be absolutely fine, you'll have managed to sort of put them to the back of your mind, and then suddenly something will happen that makes you think of them, something really innocuous, and then suddenly you're a mess. And this episode actually really managed to represent that. It's not even a big part of the episode. It's like, again, there's the moment she thinks she sees her mother, and when she puts her hand out, she turns out to be like a log that the spooky forest made her think otherwise, or like a tree stump. And then she breaks down. It's like 8 seconds, and then it moves on. And it's just incredibly done. And I couldn't not compliment Katara. Not Katara, sorry, Mae Whitman.
It's great acting
on her work here.
Yeah, it's brilliant acting. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Then, of course, the other side of it, Sokka's one, I thought was really good as well. I liked this version of Yue is almost like the Horcrux version of... people hate it when we... Well, not people. We have had one or two comments that we keep coming back to Harry Potter too often. But the Yue sort of saying to Sokka, why didn't you save me, whatever, feels like the Horcrux version of Harry and Hermione that confront Ron in the final book. You know, they're sort of like saying like the thing he's most scared of them thinking or agreeing with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely makes sense. And I really liked when he was like, I'm always thinking of her, whatever that line is, like that indication that, just because we've not mentioned her since the finale doesn't mean he's not constantly thinking of her, thinking of that scenario.
He's
and
grieving.
Thinking of what he could have done. Yeah, he is still grieving. I really liked the acknowledgement of that.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, it's easy to forget with Sokka. He's often comic relief. One of the first things he does in this episode is complain that things keep attaching to him. It's, he is a character that, at least on the surface, is often very sarcastic and quite clever, but very funny. And he doesn't often show what his worries are on the surface. He is quite good at, and I think that's like soldier training. Essentially, that's him. Like, he's had to be the man of his village for so long. For the water tribes for so long, because all the genuinely, the actual men, the people who are grown up, all fucked off. They're all gone. So he was forced to show strength and from a young age. So it's really interesting to see him dealing with Yue in that same way, because it's informed by what we already know about his character, and that's actually super clever, because essentially, you know, this episode reminds us, he's still hurting, but because of his circumstances, because of how he grew up, he has learned to put his own feelings aside and stand strong more for everyone else than even himself. Like, you know, he's putting on a brave face for the benefit of others. But he is still vulnerable. He is still grieving. You know, that's all still there, and it's all deeply informed by his other stuff. So this episode, so it's super funny. There's a ton of really cool horror stuff. Also, some really cool character moments where the characters get upset and do stuff.
Absolutely.
Fucking cool. Thanks, Avatar. Like, nailed it. And a great action scene at the end. Like, fuck off. Like, what is this?
Why do you sound so angry at the show for being good?
I don't know. It's just like,
thanks, Avatar. You wonderful television.
Just like, and the more I think about it, the more I'm like just jealous of the writing. I'm just like, what are they doing these magicians?
It is like, I know, like, I can't remember whether you got shit for it, for, you know, saying that, because every time you've said you think series 1 is the weaker show, you've put like 1,000 caveats with it. It doesn't mean it's bad, doesn't mean this, doesn't mean that. I just think there's, you know, So I don't know if you did then get comments or anything, but the reason I keep going on about every episode is a different genre is because I don't think the last series did that, and this series is doing it so well. And the writing and the layered approach to, like you say, not only is it a great horror, but we got some really great character moments with both
action
Sokka
and
Katara,
comedy,
and action and comedy.
It's ridiculous.
It really, like, this isn't an insult to series 1. But it really has upped it, this series, I think. It really has. Do you understand my frustration now, knowing that, like, you got to the end of series 1, you got there, you were on the cusp of these episodes, and then stopped. You understand my frustration. You understand why I started an entire podcast just to get you back to this point. I understand. Doesn't mean I have to not be. You know, I'm still bitter. You're
still bitter about it. Yeah,
it's forced me to do anything. Yeah.
Fair enough. What did you think?
I suggested one show the other week, and you were like, "It's gonna be shit. Fine, if we have to watch it." I mean, you were right, but I'm like, fucking done whole podcasts on shows.
For those wondering, we reviewed on Nothing But Static on Chris's suggestion, Your Honor, on the grounds of, you know, it's sort of prestige TV kind of thing, and it's got Bryan Cranston.
But also
in it.
That you could see that you'd seen what I'd seen on Gogglebox, and
we talked about this. Yeah, so Chris had seen a clip
made it look awesome.
Yeah, Chris had seen a clip that sold him on the show, and I then obviously saw that clip when I watched the show, and totally understand why he was like, "Ooh, this could be amazing," but. From my perspective at the time, having not seen that clip, and just what I had seen of it was just like looked like a really uninteresting drama to me. Evidently, like in the end, I was only right through luck, because actually it was a really interesting premise that did have the potential to be amazing. So I think in the end, actually, you were right, and the fact that the show wasn't great was actually just unfortunate luck. Like, do you know what I mean? Because in reality, any other show, well, a better written show with that premise would have been incredible, and you would have been absolutely on the money. So it's just one of those things, isn't it? I hadn't seen a clip or a trailer or whatever and decided the writing would be bad. You know what I mean? I had decided it would be a boring, uninteresting thing, and it definitely wasn't that. So I was technically wrong at the end. So it's worth adding. Anyway, other notes. I like that there's kind of a weird Florida sort of like swamp person thing going on. They have like an alligator catfish creature. There's like little hints of that, like these sort of like I guess you call them like backwater like folk, but like you know sort of humble, like uninterested in the sort of society that's building around them, sort of like what you get in the middle America. And it's I say middle America's Florida is the penis of America, isn't it? It's just like this little thing hanging off.
Is it?
At the front. On the map, it physically looks like America's penis. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, two great quotes this episode. And said with such said like they weren't strange things to say. Like I'd jiggle for a pork pie, and yeah, but Florida is the penis of America. Like, just so matter of fact. Like,
Yeah, it wasn't.
obviously.
I think it looks like it was. It is the penis of America. No offense to any
exactly.
Floridians.
Like that was like it's on the sign. Welcome to Florida. Brackets. The penis of America. Close brackets.
But yeah, I kind of liked that sort of like that parallel to like, you know, a real world people. It's not like an exact 1-to-1, obviously. It's a very different world, the world of Avatar. But I kind of, you know, the choice to give them like alligators and have them like heading through the swamp and stuff. I don't know. It just felt like they were sort of evoking that idea, even if only slightly. The notes. I just Sokka thinks everything tastes like Arctic hen. That made me laugh. I don't know why, but I wrote that down. What did you think to the whole? The swamp is just an extension of one tree, so Aang can find Appa by sort of spiritually connecting to that tree, and like using the rest of the forest / swamp as his eyes and ears.
I like that. I like that whole idea. But it actually made me flash back to in primary school. Flashback music. We were talking like we were having what I thought was quite like an open philosophical discussion. Like it would have been when you start secondary school, 11, so you know, 6 or 7 years old maybe. And I went, you know, puffed up my chest and went, oh well, you know, at the end of the day, miss, we're all brothers and sisters, aren't we? And just everyone, just those little pricks, just ripped, just everyone. Like, what? So my mum and dad are brother and sister, even though they're sleeping together. Just real. Everyone was a dick about it, Dan. Everyone was a real. You know, it's bringing up some wounds. And I thought of that, and I thought, no, I was right. As Avatar says, we're all connected.
It's true.
You know, so yeah, I felt vindicated, Dan. I felt like
you're like, if only I could have shown them this episode back then.
Yeah, exactly. I'd have been like, what's Netflix? But yeah, like, Netflix will make your dreams come true.
This kid's crazy. He thinks that everything's connected and there'll be such a thing as internet TV streaming in the future? Piss off.
Yeah. I like that notion. I like the notion that, like, I don't know, maybe it's thinking, maybe it would lead to too much of an easy solution for problems in the future. But that was almost a connotation to me of, you know, the Avatar reaches a point where they can do that with the whole world. You know.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That was my reading of it. Yeah.
My other last little point, then, I suppose, Chris, is what did you think about the quite fun little horror trope at the end of revealing that it wasn't all that guy who's protecting the swamp? They ask, like, what about the tornado? And he's like, I didn't make the tornado. And then we see separately a vine move, seemingly not related to him. How did you feel about that? Because I thought that was fun.
Don't we see a vine like slap a creature?
It slaps one of those screaming birds, yeah. So that's the bird comes back and makes that sort of eerie human scream, and then the vine just slaps it away.
Yeah, Sokka himself said it. You know, that's Avatar stuff. Like, I thought that was good. I hope we explore it more, because, you know, especially if the indication is that that they've now got everything they want from that, because it's like, well, all we really know is that there's some girl involved in Aang's future at some point. Like, I'm not sure if it brought him there specifically in that moment to tell him something. I'm not sure that's been fully covered. But yeah, I thought it was fine. I guess I was a little bit like, because it was very like eerie as he's describing it, and he's like, oh, that wasn't me. Da 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 da. I don't know if I'd have made the vine slap a bird. Like, felt very disconnected. I'd have maybe had the vine do something else. It felt a bit. It almost didn't hit me, the connotations of that moment, as much as it should, because
you were too busy. You were laughing at the silliness of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it jarred a little.
Yeah, I thought it was fun as well because as you said, it's like Avatar stuff. So like the forest, like the swamp. Although they explain a lot of the things that happened while they were in the swamp with sort of Scooby-Doo-esque it was actually this all along. Old man Smithers, who runs the amusement park, pulling the mask off the swamp guy. The reality is there were still some things that happened that were related to Aang's spooky avatar powers. And the idea that the tornado that brought them down and separated them wasn't done, and it seemed very specific. It came right for them, and Sokka just dismisses it as can't account for the weather. And there's a part of me that's just that's
that was funny.
That's very funny, but there's a part of me that's just Sokka, come on, man. you know this is Avatar stuff.
Because also he's seen enough of it. He watched his friend turn into a giant monster and stomp a load of things.
Sokka's seen so much crazy shit. It's almost like the problem they had in the X-Files with keeping Scully a skeptic. At a certain point, Scully, you have to acknowledge this shit's real. You've seen so much insane stuff. At what point do you just acknowledge it's legit? Do you know what I mean? Come on. Yeah. So with Sokka, there is a part of Sokka, stop being such a skeptic scientist guy, because you know spirits and shit are real. But yeah, I thought it was fine as well, because I just kind of the implication is that it is linked more to Aang and what drew Aang there to give him that message, and what the importance of the message was. And presumably that's one of those things where it's very much laid out in this episode as a thing that will become important later, rather than something that is important now. So you sort of forgive the episode that. Shall we crack on then with the triv?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So there's only 4, maybe 5 pieces of triv this week. Sadly, it's what's available. I also didn't have as much time as usual to check if there was triv anywhere else. So apologies if anyone thinks I've missed something interesting about this. How the guy that was in the vines gaining enlightenment under the tree is similar to how Buddha attained enlightenment. It was sat under a tree as well. There you go. The plant benders have a pet alligator called Slim, which is apparently named after one of the creators' 2 dogs. It doesn't say which creators, whether it was Michael Bri, but I'm glad we've kept that, by the way, Michael Bri.
Definitely.
Which we actually, it's funny, I think that started not on this podcast, so actually I don't think I've ever explained why I call him Bri.
No, I think it started when we were discussing the them leaving the Netflix project on Nothing But Static. Yeah,
or when we talked about Avatar Studios, maybe on Nothing But Static. Yeah, so yeah, we recently covered a news story on Nothing But Static. I think it was when they started this whole Avatar Studios story broke. If you want to hear that, you can either find the episode of Nothing But Static, or it's on the YouTube channel. It's like a 10-20 minute piece where we discuss what the permutations of them going back to Nickelodeon to potentially make more Avatar content could mean. What it means is we're doing this fucking podcast till we die. But but we discuss what they might, some of the options that they have in terms of what they might do with some of the series and movies. And in it, I said I can never pronounce Brian's second name, so we dubbed him Bri, and that is now what I know him as. The song Iroh sings at the beginning of this, which is called The Girls of Ba Sing Se, has apparently got a similar cadence to It's a Long Way to Tipperary, which is like an Irish folk song. And I did sort of, when I heard that, I was like, yeah, that does sound like Tipperary. I remember that song vaguely from when I lived in Ireland. So there you go. The swamp, apparently, visually, when seen from above, resembles the toxic jungle from Hayao Miyazaki's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, which is a Miyazaki project I don't recognize. Is that a movie? Is that a short? What is that?
I don't know.
Oh, it's that one. Yeah. Okay, I've not seen this one, but I remember this one. I remember seeing a trailer for this one. This is one. Cool. Well, it's a Studio Ghibli. It's one of the Studio Ghibli films, like an old one. Was it still Studio Ghibli back then? It's really old. So it's like 84. Anyway, they modelled it off that, or they at least took inspiration from that, which is fine. Cool. Thumbs up. The UK... Oh, nice. Wow. That film has a crazy cast when it got brought over to the West. Patrick Stewart and Shia LaBeouf. What a combo.
That is quite the duo.
Dear Lord. It looks like it got a Western release in 2005, which is like right in the Studio Ghibli fever, after Spirited Away. So that makes sense. There you go. So that's all the triv. I have a question, Chris. I actually, you know what? I did go to the trouble of getting as a proper, not to suggest Jackie's questions are not proper listener questions, but I actually went to the trouble of getting one because I can't just do Jackie's questions every week. That seems unfair. So I've dived in to the mailbag, Chris, and we have a question from Will, who asks us, what was in the briefcase in Pulp Fiction? What do you think? So the common theory, right, is that it was Marcel Wallace's soul, right?
Yeah.
But the problem with that is, if I'm average gangster guy, and I find a briefcase, when I open it, I sort of go, that suggests I recognise what's in there. I don't think I'd know what a soul looks like on its own. So I'm going to say that what was in the briefcase was some sort of valuable... It's a boring answer, but some sort of valuable gold thing that was so valuable and so gold and shiny that it shined golden light out of it.
I think it was a Royale with cheese.
The correct answer, yes. All right, cool. Actually, no, I'm not gonna. That's the answer. Well, we're going with the Royale with cheese, but I've also had another version now where they open the briefcase and there's a little monitor to the top of the briefcase, and it's just showing Pulp Fiction.
Or it's like the box from Seven. Like, it's just basically all these
it's got
boxes.
Brad Pitt's wife's head in it.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know who this lady's head is. I don't know, whatever.
I'm with you on like the actual answer, but I like to think it's a Royale with cheese. They just discussed it so much in the film that's ended up in there.
That's good. Yeah, I enjoy that. It's a good answer.
There you go. Good question.
Yeah, I think Marcellus Wallace's soul is like the most common. Like, that is what most people think it is. And it doesn't. I mean, look, that is fun to make it sort of weirdly supernatural out of nowhere. But like, the movie was distinctly not sort of supernatural in that way. So I don't know. Like, it's probably something valuable, right? Again, I guess if it was something valuable, you would just show that. So I guess keeping it a mystery is like, I don't know. I can never decide with that briefcase if that was like lazy writing. He just didn't want, like, he just knew that nothing could live up to the expectations of a movie where it was all about that briefcase and what was in it, and everyone sort of was chasing it down. Like, the idea of opening it up and it's just some money or something. I guess he was like, well, that'll never be exciting, so we'll make it mysterious, because at least that way anyone can just imagine what's in there. It's
I think so.
Schrodinger's briefcase.
I think people would be shocked, and I'm not saying for sure Quentin did this, but this is a general point leading off from that. I think people would be shocked at the amount of times that writers must not know, like, the things they're theorizing on. The writer just doesn't know or care. Like, for me, the big one is constantly what happened on the fishing trip in Gavin and Stacey, and I'm like, Ruth Jones and James Corden don't have an answer to that question, and that's the point. That's the joy in it. The fact that they can lay all these clues that don't make sense because they themselves don't know. Like, it must happen so much in TV and film where the writer's just like, I don't know. And that's, it's fine. It's not how I personally like to write. I like to know, but yeah, I don't. It wouldn't surprise me if there's not an answer.
Was it Tony Jordan, the British writer, that writes? What was the show? Is it Spooks? Is he the Spooks guy?
No, Hustle.
Hustle.
Yeah.
And he famously said that, like, because that show is kind of famous for like crazy, like, not twist endings as such, but like surprising ways out of the situations in question, like where it goes funny ways. He always says that he just like intentionally writes them into a corner without knowing how he's going to get them out of it, and the challenge writing wise for him is to make sense of that, but he doesn't know when he sets up the cliffhanger or whatever, how he's going to get them out of the situation. It's like, and I was like, yeah, That's impressive
He's
to
a
me.
genius.
Like, I'm always like,
Yeah.
okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I
especially-
respect it, even though you would argue it's cheating, because actually you've made your job harder for yourself there. Because working
Well,
backwards
you've got to
like that is
assume
tough.
you got to assume he backs himself into a corner, writes the solution, and then redrafts the script to then fit and
Even
layer
it out.
in that solution. You'd assume, but the man's a genius, because Hustle has some. I didn't watch much of it, but I watched the odd episode, and it's very intricate and it's good.
We should make it because we've just realised how long this is. This is 2 episodes, not in a row, but like we 2 episodes, one within space of each other. Like we've gone over an hour. We very rarely do that, so we need to rein it in, Chris. So let's end it there. But thank you for your question, Will. That was a very good question.
It's almost like, Dan, adding a segment to the podcast has extended it by 10 minutes.
I reject that hypothesis. Moving on. Thank you everyone for listening. Obviously, as always, big heroes. You can get us in all the usual places. If you'd like to be a patron and ask us a question like Will just did, you want to find out our shoe sizes or some other weird thing, you're welcome to ask on the Patreon. For less than $1 a month, you can be a member, and once you're a member, you can either ask on the thread that I post every so often, or you can go on the Discord and ask in the Yellow Lounge sort of what do they call it, room section, whatever we call it, and we'll tackle your questions on podcast and give you a little shout out. The other thing you can do, obviously, the other benefit to being a patron is getting episodes a week early. So if you listen to this or Rewind Reviews or both, you have the option to hear those. We record them in advance, so they go out on the podcast feed, the RSS feed on the Patreon 1 week ahead of their actual release. So for example, if you're currently listening to this on Spotify and you want to hear the next episode right now, just head over to the Patreon, give us as little as $1 a month, or at least sign up and listen and then cancel, I guess. You have access to to next week's episode early, which is a good thing. It's a good idea. The only downside to that is if at any point if you cancel, you're then having to wait 2 weeks for a new episode,
which would be disastrous. So just it's easier not to cancel.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, correct. If you don't want to give us money because you think because you don't think we're
unworthy,
because you don't think we deserve it, which is absolutely reasonable on the basis of this podcast. We started so well this year. I remember when we started the first episode of season 2, and I said, "Man, normally we're very down on ourselves and saying we were like we're great." Now we're already back. It's taken 4 episodes for me to get back to we are shit. Why do you listen to this? It's not taking me long. But if you would like to help us and support us in a way that isn't with your own money, which is understandable, you're welcome to do so by heading over to the podcast platform of your choice and giving us a rating or a review, or heading over to YouTube and giving us a like or a subscribe. These things do help, I'm told.
They do indeed.
So the other option, of course, is if you want to talk to us, you want to send us a message of some sort, you're welcome to do so. There's a few different ways. There's mail at Nothing But Static. There's the YouTube comment section if you want to delve into those deep and potentially scary waters, or you can get us on Twitter. I'm at Dan Doolan. Chris is at C Billingham with 2 M's. So if you disagree with something we said this week, stick it in there. Let us know. Tell us your thoughts. We're interested. It's always tricky because I always think with other YouTubers, it feels disingenuous when they say, "I want to know your thoughts. Stick them in the comments." Because part of me is just like, you're just doing that because you want the extra
you want the algorithm
you get from engagement. You're not reading them. You don't care. But I do genuinely like hearing when people disagree. It's like I don't know if I'm sad that way, but I do, especially with the Infinity Train ones we did recently. I've been getting a lot of comments about people who have different perspectives. As I've been reviewing Infinity Train, it's been an interestingly divisive season. This 4th one, and I've been really enjoying engaging with that. And I'm not. I mean, we're not a big YouTube channel. The engagement doesn't really make a big difference to us. So I'm just sort of happy the comments are coming in because I'm enjoying the discussion. So yeah, and the same goes for this. If you think we're out of our minds and we've said something you completely disagree with, or you agree, you should have a perspective of your own or something we've missed, do it. I want to hear it.
Yeah, man.
I'll try.
Comment
And,
away,
I respond
definitely.
where I can. I'm very intermittent with responding on YouTube. Like there'll be a week where I'll have a bunch of free time and I'll respond to tons, and then there'll be a week where like loads of comments come in and I just don't have the time. So I'm sorry if you happen to comment in those weeks and you're looking for a response and you don't get it. But there you go. So anyway, yeah, that's everything for this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. Well, I'm having an absolute blast doing these, and I can't wait to get through the rest of the series. I assume Chris is feeling the same way right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
without doubt.
Joyous. So yeah, thanks. That's everything for this week. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll see you next time when we sit down to discuss Avatar Day.